this has been a ongoing pattern of abuse over really the last, well, since 2017. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that I've gone to the authorities about civil rights violations over and over and over again. And people just naturally at a certain point they get fed up and are just sick and tired of the same things happening, especially if the authorities are not doing anything about it, to address it. So um
And you've gone to the
so
top. You've gone to the
I've
person, you've attempted to go to the person that is the captain of the helm.
Well, I'll put it this way. I have gone all the way up to the top as far as the Department of Justice. I've submitted three Office of the Inspector General um, complaints on things that have happened. I've attached the evidence that's unmistakable to it, such as one of them had to do with the sheriff's deputy in Lafayette County that intentionally lied on stand in court and put me in prison for a year, Candace Beavers. When I got out after serving that year, and that was for what they did is they violated my probation. They said that I had violated the banishment clause when I came to the FBI office, even though I had recorded calls with them saying, "Hey, look, I need to come up there." We had worked out a time to come up there, and then I called the sheriff's department and spoke to Candace Beavers, and I recorded that call, and everything verbatim was just how it needed to be. And she lied on stand in court, and through her lies, I got sent to prison for a year. So I did what anybody should do whenever that type of thing has happened. And when I got out August 1st, I exposed it. I put the transcript, the court transcript, as well as the call recordings that are matched up with the transcript to show she intentionally lied. And that's where our association comes in, is where, the Galveston ordeal. She's on call recording calling down there and speaking to Osteen. It was intentional retaliation. And this is stuff that the Department of Justice certainly needs to dive into. But
Right.
I have, and also on top of that, not to mention they need to dive into it, but why hasn't the FBI come forward and spoken up and said, yeah, that we talked to that guy. Yeah, what happened to him was screwed up. She shouldn't have said what she said. Why have they remained silent? And that's a big problem, because silence is complicity. If there's, I've released the calls, and it clearly shows that I spoke with the FBI and did exactly what they said. Why have they remained silent? So to me, that was an Office of the Inspector General complaint that needed to get filed. Yeah, the calls, the transcripts, I got sent to prison for it. And um, they won't even assign it a case number. They won't respond to any communication I have. I've literally I've called up there and left voicemail messages stating the importance, and they will not call back.
Right.
It's like I'm literally being flicked away like a fly by the Department of Justice. So, who do you like what who do you go to, and what do you do when going to the proper authorities for help? They stonewall it. And that's really the biggest issue right now is, yeah, I've gone to the Attorney General's office in Mississippi countless times. They won't do anything at all. And I think a lot of it comes down to do anything means they admit that they were wrong in the first place. And they don't want to do that. So it's like it puts me between a rock and a hard place as far as what to do.
In Galveston, where the Mississippi law enforcement actually called Galveston to give them I'm going to use air quotes, heads up that you were in the Galveston territory, is unbelievable and shocking to me.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah,
Unbelievable and shocking.
so I wanted to speak to the public, and I wanted to also address these three offices which I've seen as completely complicit.
Good afternoon. My name's Matthew Reardon. I'm a journalist. I'm a father. I'm a citizen of the United States. And on July 3rd, 2025, on a sidewalk paid for by we the people, I was violently confronted and assaulted by a Mississippi state trooper for doing exactly what the Constitution permits and protects, holding a sign and speaking my truth. That truth, the people of Mississippi are being failed, not only by the laws being passed, but by the force used to silence those who dare to oppose them. I was standing peacefully on a public sidewalk outside the governor's mansion in Jackson, live streaming, holding a sign, exercising my First Amendment rights, the same rights that brave men and women fought and died for, the same rights that every elected official in this state took an oath to uphold. But instead of protecting those rights, a Mississippi state trooper charged at me, knocked my camera phone off my gimbal, stepped on it, and screamed at me to leave public property under threat of arrest. And when I asked for his name and badge number, he refused. When I asked for a supervisor, they covered for him. When I demanded accountability, I got a shrug and a smirk. That officer's face may as well have been the face of a government saying, "Your rights don't matter here." Let me be clear. This was not law enforcement. This was lawless enforcement. We cannot allow the badge to become a shield for brutality. We cannot allow the uniform to become a weapon against free speech. And we will not accept a future in which any citizen is violently silenced for challenging the powerful. So today I'm calling on 3 specific offices, and I will not be ignored. First, to the office of Governor Tate Reeves. You have a duty to speak. The public is watching. The world is watching. Issue an immediate statement denouncing the actions of your state trooper. Make clear to your citizens, to law enforcement, and to the nation that violence against peaceful protest is not Mississippi policy. Silence is complicity. Your inaction is permission. Speak up. Second, to the Mississippi Attorney General. You have received complaint after complaint of government corruption and coordinated retaliation, including formal grievances, sworn affidavits, and documented civil rights violations. You have ignored every single one. This time, there's video. This time, there are hundreds of witnesses, and by now, close to 100,000. This time, I'm submitting a sworn criminal affidavit under penalty of perjury for assault and battery by a sworn officer of your state. You must acknowledge this complaint, or step aside and appoint a special counsel to prosecute it. Your job is not to defend the badge. It's to defend the law. And the law demands prosecution when citizens are assaulted by the very officials sworn to uphold their rights. Finally, to the United States Department of Justice. The time for polite emails and press releases is over. Mississippi is violating the civil rights of its people, openly, violently, and without consequence. I'm formally calling for the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, to initiate a pattern and practice investigation under federal law into the Mississippi Highway Patrol, the Office of the Governor, and other state agencies involved in this ongoing campaign of retaliation. This is no longer about one officer. It's about a system that refuses to hold itself accountable. A system that signs false extradition papers, imprisons the innocent, destroys lives, and assaults journalists on camera. If this can happen to me, a man with a camera and a platform, then what happens to the voiceless, to the homeless, to the poor, to the forgotten? That's why I'm standing here today, not just for me, but for everyone who's been told to shut up, stand down, and disappear. The public deserves justice. The press deserves protection. And the law demands prosecution when citizens are assaulted by the very officials sworn to uphold their rights. We're not going away. We're not backing down. And we will not stop until every corrupt actor is exposed. Every officer who broke the law is held to account. And every citizen's right to protest is restored and respected. This fight is just beginning. And I promise you this, I will not be silent. Not now, not ever. Please help spread this message. Make sure the governor's office gets it. Make sure the Mississippi Attorney General's office gets it. Make sure the United States Department of Justice gets it. This madness has gone on for too long. It's this madness that creates people like me they see as a huge problem.
Yeah, all this is we the people's property. Now, inside of that gate, huh?
You go across the street with that sign and all that, okay?
Well, no, I'm fine right here.
No, you're not fine.
How am I not?
Because I said you are.
I'm on the sidewalk.
No. Yeah, one more time.
I'm on
Get
the...
your stuff. They go the fuck across the street. You understand me?
Is it under threat of arrest?
Now you're on the threat of arrest. The fuck ain't around here, man.
Do you know what the First Amendment is?
I don't give a fuck with the
What's your name? What's your name? What's your name and badge number? Tyrant? What's your name and badge number? I have a First Amendment right to be on the sidewalk. I'm on the fucking sidewalk. I'm on the fucking sidewalk. Do something about it.
Hey, man, get your shit. Go.
Hey, you're gonna get away from me. You're gonna get away from me. Put your hands on me.
Get the fuck on before I knock you.
Oh!
Fuck on, man.
Whoa!
Fuck on with you. We tell you that, man.
Hey, let's de-escalate.
Fuck you think I'm playing with you, man?
Hey,
Fuck.
Lig. Go back in.
That's it. I want charges placed on him.
I want charges on him. I want charges on him now. I want charges on him now. I want charges on him now.
Hey.
I want charges on him now. Oh.
We don't sit your ass.
There's something seriously wrong with you. What the fuck are you gonna do about it? What are you doing to him? He doesn't need to even be here anymore.
So, yeah, that's I mean, I could continue playing it, but I mean, you get the point. You know, the video's on the channel. So, what do you have to say about the whole? You know, yeah, the first time that was a intimidation and a provocation by the state trooper, but especially the second time when the supervisor was there, and when there were two other state troopers that were there, and grabbed him and held him back. And then he still tried to break loose to them a second time right there when I said I wanted charges put on him. And it was like a football player coming through the line. I mean, what do they have a duty if they observe a crime being committed right there, which they clearly did, it was in their sight. What type of duty exists?
Well, I am not licensed in Mississippi, so I'm not. So my comments are definitely a legal opinion based on my, the jurisdiction from which I'm licensed. And a law enforcement officer does have the duty to act when they see and actually observe a criminal act. It doesn't matter if it's one of their own or a private citizen.
And yeah, I think this certainly gets into um I think this certainly treads into federal waters because under 18 U.S. Code 242, and even possibly 18 U.S. Code 241. If you were advising somebody on this particular event, and I know that you're in Texas, okay, would you advise them to seek remedy through state methods or through federal methods?
Think there would be more, in my opinion, that you would probably have more success on the federal side than on the state, especially because this law enforcement officer is an officer of the state. And I feel like that sometimes state courts are a little bit more biased toward their own. I don't want to, and I say that only because I think it's just a natural evolution or a natural effect, right? Just like a parent might observe their child doing something
Right.
wrong, but their natural instinct is to say, not my kid. My kid didn't do that, you know. So I take definitely a position of neutrality by by all means. But in this instance, I would say that your redress and your remedies may have to go through the federal courts. I also see a Chapter 42 U.S. Code of Section 1983 here because we have some civil rights violations of your basic civil rights violations. Was the force, I almost want to say, was the force reasonable to the circumstances? Now, I'm not sure in what area of Mississippi this is and if they're in the Fifth Circuit or not.
Yeah, it's
And,
the Fifth
and
Circuit.
yeah, so the Fifth Circuit has a new rule. The Supreme Court has set new precedent on May 15th of this year in Barnes v. Felix. In the Fifth Circuit, in the use of excessive force, the rule was that moment in time that the officer decided to use that force, and that's when it was assessed, is by that moment in time. And in the new law that the Supreme Court, and the new decision that the Supreme Court made in Barnes v. Felix, amongst other things, but the big one in here for civil rights attorneys like myself is that it's now the totality of the circumstances. Was the force reasonable and necessary to the situation considering the totality of the circumstances? Now, there are some other things in Barnes v. Felix. This is not the all to end all because it does cut both ways, and that's like a whole full other analysis because it can be used against us. But overwhelmingly, the overarching theme is it's longer this moment in time because they were too emotional. And, they can't be emotional in these jobs. They have to be very methodical in their decision making. And so now it truly is, Supreme Court is saying, Fifth Circuit, guess what? You have a new rule and we just made it for you. And it's the totality of the circumstances. So in my opinion and observation of this film, I even would suggest that there could be some Section 1983 constitutional violation, civil rights violation claims based on his
Absolutely.
aggression. These cases are hard to win, but sometimes the win isn't necessarily that you get a judgment in your favor, but the win is that you filed this lawsuit. It garners publicity and attention and forces agencies to change their policies. And that's the big picture win, right? It doesn't often serve justice to the individual that the action was imposed upon, but it can
Efforts the
offer,
public.
yeah, it can definitely offer justice in the future if in fact that they take heed that people are watching and they need to do better, right? I'm not anti-law enforcement, but I am anti-bad cop. I'm anti-bad
I think we
policy,
all are. Yeah.
right? I'm anti-bad policy. We've all probably needed law enforcement in our lives at some point in time, whether if it was a car accident or if you're misfortunate to be a victim of domestic abuse. But there are times when you may need to engage. We always hope that law enforcement officer acts with integrity and acts, that he follows the rules and the policy of that law enforcement. Because I read a lot of these policies, and for the most part, overwhelmingly, their policies are good policies. They're just not following them, right? The policies are sound. The policies, not all the time. I mean, sometimes they have some little wonky things, but overwhelmingly, the policy is there. But part of the problem is that sometimes the bad policy is that there is no policy. That is actually more egregious than bad policy, is that there's no policy. But more, like I said, more importantly, it's not the justice of the individual that unfortunately doesn't garner that, but the public at large, because when the lawsuit is filed, it gets the attention and makes those agencies aware that people are watching, and they're watching everything they're doing. Sure. And this is our way of calling them out, right? Yeah.
So let's talk about the public, and about how it affects the public. So in regards to silence on the matter, I mean, do you think that that there is a certain duty? It may be something that's basically implied, but a duty to say something, to address the issue, say from the governor's seat, being that this happened right outside of the governor's mansion, and it is becoming a public ordeal. What does silence say in all of that, especially when it's that door has been knocked on? I mean, me personally, I feel like, it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be, condemned basically from the governor, because I believe it sends a message not only to the
Sure.
citizens of the state, the chilling message, but it also sends a message to the nation that this is what Mississippi does. This is
right. I'm with you. I think we had a brief conversation where you said that silence is complicity, and not that silence is always complicity in every situation, but in this situation, especially when you're talking about a public office who bankrolls these agencies that are under their purview, and they did something wrong. It's very evident that there was a bad act. And there's not even one little breadcrumb that's offered, which is so easy to swallow a little bit of crow and say, look, we know that this officer didn't do the right thing that day. And the only thing that we can offer right now is an apology. I guess for them, that's probably more like swallowing an emu and not crow. But,
right.
Sometimes they have to eat a little crow. And those kinds of efforts of genuine, not disingenuous, but genuine effort to say, hey, we know they messed up, and
Yeah,
we
they go a long ways. Yeah,
it'll go a long way. It'll go a long
it
way.
does.
But the silence in this instance, I think, is complicity. They don't have that protection of, if they were in a court proceeding to assert the Fifth Amendment. That was, BS. And
Right,
obviously in this
exactly.
situation, they can't assert the Fifth Amendment because they're not involved in proceedings. But, just likened to that, they don't have the option. To me, it doesn't seem like that they should have the option to say, oh, we're just not going to say nothing. That this doesn't make
Right.
sense.
They're accountable to the public. These are public,
Right.
these are elected officials that have a duty to the public, instead of clamming up and trying to bury it, which is what we're seeing. I called the governor's office. That's actually on the end of that video that I first showed. The response that I got from the governor's office was, any questions that you have for the governor's office needs to be put in writing via email sent to our press people. And I said, well, I mean, I want to speak with somebody. Like, not only am I a member of the press, but I'm actually the victim in this. And so I want this, I want somebody to say something. I want to speak with somebody live. They will not do it. They want to direct all questions via email to their press, officers,
So they can have
sit
everything
on
in
it,
writing. They want
so they
everything
can,
in
yeah,
writing. Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be
So
surprised by any question. They want to be able to actually think on it and turn it over and let several people do the thinking for them instead of being confronted with a challenging question.
right, right. Unfortunately, in the face of adversity, there are a lot of cowards, and they would rather turn and walk away with their tail between their legs instead of face adversity and it front, forward on and say, let's work through this. Let's have a genuine conversation. What can we do to remedy this? Instead of being, we expect our public officials to be problem solvers. And in this situation right now, as it appears, there is no problem solving yet.
Yeah, it's Mississippi has got a big problem with accountability. And I'll tell you another thing they got a big problem with is this has happened time and time again for the last 8 years. And I've talked to several people that it's happened to them. When the state messes up, when they screw up, when they make a bad arrest, instead of taking accountability for it, they start going into, all right, let's go ahead and start setting the dominoes up. They start scheming to take that person down, to falsely charge that person with something so that it's the ultimate cover up. It's the deflect the attention away from that and put it right here on that person and bury that person in the system. Case in point, I've got a girl that her sister reached out to me. She was back in 2020. She was illegally arrested for talking in the driveway, of her friend's house. Basically, the officer was just, he told her if she said one more thing, that he was going to arrest her, and he did. She was talking to somebody like I think like a family friend, and he arrested her, and they ended up dismissing the charge and threw it out. But then she kept noticing more and more sheriff's deputies that were following her everywhere that she went. She got I mean, she said that it was a
I
it
have
was
a
a
case
complete
like that. I have a case like that, Matthew, where
Mhm.
the woman reported domestic violence. The man had allies in the local police department, one of these smaller communities outside of Houston. And then they started colluding and creating situations and seeking very highly unusual situations, like what they say, making a mountain out of a molehill, and pulling this woman over, consistently arresting her when she had done, and it's on video, she has done no wrong, even in so much as trying to get her for drunk driving. She wasn't drinking. The officer was behind her on the highway. We have the dash cam. He writes in his report, well, you went over the center lane line by so many feet or inches. She never even crossed the line. And so it became this systematic attack of always trying to beat her down because of the relationship that the abuser had with an officer in the court. And, of course, the couple, unfortunately, are in the middle of a custody battle with their children. And so creating this havoc in this woman's life will taint her circumstances to let her have the ability to have whether
Yeah,
it's partial or full custody of her children. And yeah, it's just unbelievable to me how that collusion happens. That my mother told me when I was very young. It's always stuck with me, and I'm almost 60. And she would say, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave, when at first we do deceive." And I think about that all the time, more so now
yeah.
as than I had a career in education way before I became an attorney, and I never really thought about it that much as it applied to
You
my
never really
daily
thought
life.
that all these things really happened until you became an attorney and got to see it. Like before,
All
it's like,
right,
okay, it's a conspiracy theory. That's a conspiracy theory. Now you get to see it, and it's like, people don't realize that stuff really does happen.
it really does.
I mean,
It
this
really
this girl
does.
I was telling you about, Rebecca Baumgardner, got sentenced to 24 years. She's
Holy
in
moly.
prison right now. Called me yesterday. I'm working on an article for her and some to help her out some legal documents, and 24 years. It's a tough pill to swallow. It's the Mississippi loves their habitual statute, and that's basically what they did. That's a scary reality with everything
Right.
that's going on right now is the complete weaponization of the system. So yeah, I don't know if you saw or not, but I went to the day after all that happened, I went to the South Haven Police Department and I figured, okay, I want to ask some questions. As I was going into it, I made the conscious decision I'm going to tell the facts. I want to hear what his answer is before he's actually told that this person is a state trooper and that this happened outside of the governor's mansion.
All right, so if I'm out, I'm filming on the sidewalk.
Okay.
And it's a public sidewalk.
Sure.
And somebody comes up threatening me, telling me to get off of the sidewalk, and then they charge at me and punch me. Knock the camera off of the gimbal right here, and then step on the phone. What? First of all, what crimes would that be?
So
That would be. I know that would be assault. That would probably also be fall under battery, correct?
so we don't have a battery charge. What we have aggravated assault and we have simple assault in Mississippi.
Okay.
And obviously aggravated assault is considered a felony,
Right.
depending on the injuries that the person sustains and so forth as far
Sure.
as that goes. So with that, what you're talking about, unless they cause severe injury to your body, it would be
Right.
considered a simple assault at that point in time.
Okay.
As far as the destruction of your property, that would be considered malicious mischief
Okay.
because they had intent to destroy your property and go from there. In which, yes, we would allow you to sign charges for the simple assault as well as sign charges for the malicious mischief. Typically, the way we handle it, though, when people sign charges for those malicious mischief, simple assault, whatever it is, we set it for a probable cause hearing,
Yeah.
which then goes before the judge, and the judge hears what you have to say about it, or if you have evidence or whatever it may be.
And of course, if it's a felony, it would go before a grand jury.
Felony goes for a grand jury. Obviously, we would call detectives out there and everything else if it was considered aggravated assault, and go from there, in which they would have that go for a grand jury and get all that stuff figured out.
Now, if being that I'm a journalist,
Mhm.
intimidation of a journalist, I believe I'd seen that in the penal codes somewhere that there was and maybe that falls more under public officials.
I think it falls more under public officials. So what we do have a charge, it's called simple assault by physical fear. That's where the person doesn't necessarily put their hands on you, but they are coming at you, balled up fist, saying they're going to hurt you, harm you, or they could even have a possible gun in their hand.
Sure.
They could even point it at you, technically, and that would be considered simple assault physical fear because they have not shot you or whatever it may be.
Right.
Now, I understand the statute states specifically if somebody has a gun pointed at you, it could be kind of considered aggravated assault to a certain degree, but our DA's office and everything else, the way they handle things, it doesn't exactly fall under that. So the
Okay.
physical fear, depending on how that happens, could fall under that if they don't put hands on somebody.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, it's pretty clear cut. I mean, I know they hold us to that standard as
Right.
far as, but we also know there's two sets of laws, and that's a big thing that's part of my activism. I want to press criminal charges on the matter. I want this to actually go before a grand jury of my peers. Well, and if it's a misdemeanor, it may not be a grand jury unless it's on the federal side. But I mean, I think if it was going to the federal side anyways, it'd be under 18 U.S. Code 242. But now on the state side, I can draw up a sworn affidavit and sign it in the presence of a notary, alleging the facts and alleging the penal code, and submit that. And then the DA has really no option. They have to turn it over, I believe, to a grand jury unless it's a misdemeanor. Now, so I guess it's a two-part question. If I were to do it with state charges, okay, which may not be the best of routes, seeing how everything's gone in Mississippi, but if I were to do it on the state side, I would probably, with this being a state trooper, and not a normal citizen, it would probably be something that would go through the attorney general's office, I would imagine, instead of a DA.
Yeah,
Um,
most likely, the DA's office would kick it to the attorney general, because even though the individual, so you have two different components, right? The Mr. Him individual, and then Mr. Him, the law enforcement agent. So, and then he was acting during the scope of his employment as a law enforcement um, officer, right? As an officer. So that's what really complicates it. And then, so are you now also having to sue the state troopers? And I don't know what the requirements are in Mississippi, but when you sue the state, you just like there's an old saying, you have to have permission to sue the king. So, so I don't know what kind of hoops you would have to jump through to bring in the
well,
Texas
being that
state
there was a
troopers, right?
supervisor,
I mean, the
yeah,
Mississippi
being
state
that there was
troopers.
a being that there was a supervisor there on hand, I would say probably helps the matter more because I mean, he was there. He could have backed him down. He could have listened. Like it's a little bit different than if I would have just
Right.
been simply
Yeah,
confronted by the
and then
state
you
trooper and
can't
nobody else was
sue,
there.
and you can't sue the state troopers. You have to sue the state,
Correct.
because it's, you can't sue the agency, it's in itself. The agency in itself is not an independent entity, and I think that's a
It's an arm of
national,
the
I know
state.
that's like that. Yeah, I know that's in Texas, it's like that. You can't sue MHMRA without suing the government that manages, whether if it's a municipality or if it's the state. So and if you sue the state, there are all these other hoops you have to jump through to sue the state.
Absolutely. So where I can do that on the state side, can I do that on the federal side? Meaning, so can I, if I drafted up an affidavit, a criminal affidavit for what happened, can I submit that on the federal side? Is there a duty to receive it? If they receive it, is there a duty to present
Hmm.
it?
That's a really great question. And I am aware, so I have a criminal case in the Eastern District of Texas, not like this one, but it was instituted from what started as a state matter, and then somehow the federal government was folded in, only not to prosecute the federal government, but to prosecute my clients now on a federal claim. But somebody had to get to the U.S. Attorney's office for, to let them, hey, there's all this other stuff going on, and now we think this is federal. And then so the agencies that were involved were inspired by the U.S. Attorney's Office to do an investigation. So I would imagine that there is some kind of pathway that you could go through the U.S. Attorney's Office to say, hey, there's a criminal act here, and it needs to be investigated. And I don't know what that investigative agency is, because I think ultimately it has to be the investigative agency that asserts the lawsuit that the U.S. Attorney's Office would oversee. There's like,
Right.
because even though my client in my case is being sued by the U.S. government, by the U.S. Attorney's Office, by the U.S. government, there are other underlying agencies that are actually truly bringing the charges, but they're bringing the charges through the U.S. Attorney's Office. Like it's like the SBA, the FDIC. It's a white collar crime, but those agencies in itself are not suing, but they brought it through the U.S. Attorney's Office, who is now prosecuting my client and a couple of other defendants. So
Got
that
it.
seems like that in a criminal matter, that there would be a lot of hoops, I think, that have to be jumped through. I would
Sure.
perceive that because in Texas there is a civil assault and there is a criminal assault, and the
Sure.
elements are the same. I don't know what it's like in Mississippi. It's the same way in Minnesota, where my state jurisdictional license is. There is a criminal assault and there is a civil assault. And sometimes the civil path is the path of least resistance, not necessarily no resistance, but least resistance. But the penalties are different, right? Nobody can become incarcerated because of a civil, the decision based on a civil lawsuit. You know, the remedies usually either are injunctions, you know, or maybe some type of monetary punitive damages, but you would never get an incarceration out of it.
Well, and it's kind of like how RICO goes. You know, they have the criminal racketeering under the
Yep.
RICO statute, and they have civil RICO, which is a lawsuit that can be filed. And you know, honestly, looking at everything over the past 8 years, this is yet another predicate act. You know, that's been committed by you know, going further on the umbrella. I was looking at North Mississippi, Lafayette County, Oxford. You know, that had continuously, you know, conspired and committed these atrocious crimes. But now we've got, you know, the state, this incident down at outside of the governor's mansion in Mississippi, where, you know, being tired of being forcefully silenced by the state and deciding that I was going to let my voice be heard. You know, the I was gonna exercise my freedom of speech, which brings me to the, you know, I wanted you as an attorney and civil rights attorney to kind of just briefly uh, walk through the constitutional protections that I was exercising and how this incident reflects a violation of those rights. I think we kind of talked on that already, but just for those out there that that may disagree with you know, the choice of wording, maybe what I had on my sign, and I think that gets into Cohen versus California, just a basic, you know.
Sure. I mean, but
Just,
even, I mean, we can even go further back. I mean, this, your speech was not inciting violence. It was maybe not couth or classy, maybe a little brash, right? But it was not inciting violence.
right.
And that's one of those premises on for peaceful protest is that you can stand and protest. You can say things, you know, you can't say kill the governor, but saying fuck the governor is not insightful, right? Kill the governor
Right.
might have been a whole that would have been like a whole different animal to say something
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. You know, I'm gonna shoot
Yeah.
this motherfucking place up. Oh yeah, you
Right.
were gonna get
Right. Right.
arrested,
Right.
right? But there
Right.
was nothing there. So it's a clear violation of your First Amendment right. And you are on a public sidewalk. Now, an officer can ask you to keep on moving. That's not unlawful by any stretch. And I don't know what the laws and the rules are there, particularly around like government offices in Mississippi. They may have some kind of local rule or statute, like no protest or peaceful protest within so many feet or meters of, you know, of that property, even if it's on the sidewalk, if it's still inside that protective perimeter, then perhaps it might be a misdemeanor, right?
Right.
It wouldn't be a felony. But not knowing that, I wouldn't be able to say exclusively that there
There's
was.
not.
There's not.
They've had other protests. They've had other protests there, and there's nothing, no sign. They didn't. The officers would have, look. They were wanting anything that they could to justify their actions and to get me out of there. So if that would
Sure,
have
sure.
existed, they would have certainly pulled that rule and said, "Hey, look, we have a law, we have a rule, yada yada yada."
Right.
They
And there are
wanted
no
a reason
permits.
to come
And I
after
know
me.
that some types of protests require permits, but that's also very, very narrow as well. You know, right?
Right.
There are some narrow exceptions, but overwhelmingly, definitely First Amendment type violation. With him putting his hands on you, we have a Fourth Amendment violation for excessive force because it was not reasonable to the circumstances. Oh, sorry about that.
Do you
And
think we
then
have a 14th as well because of other people being able to protest there and basically this happening to me may signify a 14th, right?
it potentially could be some denial of due process of some sort. Um,
Well,
that would
equal
be,
protection of the laws.
an equal protection, but even somewhat due process, right? He didn't give you any due process. He just came right in for the jugular, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
that
Absolutely.
absolutely is a stretch, right? But there's a lot of ways you can
Mhm.
skin a cat. And I would say that, but actually equal protection under the law would be a good one too. That also could be enough. And so
Yes.
yeah, they have a little problem. Yeah, that particular trooper, for whatever reason, had a bug in his bum, and he just wanted to have his way that day, and he wasn't going to get it.
Had quite a few people actually make the comment online that they believe that that was the steroids talking. Now,
Oh,
whether or not he,
I didn't look at
but
him really good. I didn't look at him that
I mean,
well,
as
but
buff as he was and just how quick he was to snap like that
that roid
multiple
rage.
times,
Yeah,
roid rage. Exactly. That's exactly what I've heard a lot of people say. Um, do you see this as part of a broader trend of retaliatory enforcement against critics or journalists? And what
sure.
role does the lack of
Sure.
oversight play?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would, as I've, seen on TV, various different reporting outlets, this definitely is a systemic issue in my opinion, especially in this current political climate. Um, doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. It's just that the way the climate is now, it is definitely, a problem that some law enforcement officers have become very emboldened to think that they can do whatever they want to do, however they want to do it, with no regard to local laws or the Constitution, right? And it's scary times. And I know that we still had that facet in the previous political climate, but under this political climate, it's more emboldened than it was,
Absolutely.
you know,
Now,
and
what
yeah, no accountability.
what about the
Mm-mm.
right to defend oneself on that? I know I had made the comment that if he attacked me, like uh,
Yeah.
if it's something unlawful. I know Texas grants a lot or
Oh,
grants
yeah.
probably more leeway than anywhere else about defending an unlawful
Right.
arrest, defending oneself. If I would have, I'm sure, as I said, if I would have pulled the pepper spray out and if I would have sprayed him down with pepper spray, I'm sure they would have
You'd
whooped
be
my
in
ass.
jail.
But
They would have broken your nose and you'd be in jail right now. Because the rule actually, and I don't know like I said, what it is in Mississippi. Here in Texas, we have a stand your ground statute that comes with all other nice things for private citizens as it relates to
Mhm.
self-defense. I think that Florida is very similar in those laws. And it's also coupled with Second Amendment rights, and, in Texas, we're constitutional carry. So it's really unique here. But defending self-defense is a defense, right? Self-defense is a defense. Although, just the black letter law in torts is that you can only use the same type of force that is being used against you. So somebody
Sure.
who's whooping you with knuckles, and you pull out a gun, that's not going to fly. That's going to be
Right.
a hard
Well,
road to fight.
and the process is the punishment, as we all know, as I've learned with Galveston. That was that whole ordeal. I'm so glad that chapter is closed. A new one is starting with the civil rights litigation, but that chapter is closed as far as the criminal side. They used his lies to imprison me, and then that prison sentence was declared illegal, and
I
it was
just still
vacated. I
can't
was released.
believe that. Yeah, I just still can't believe that those law enforcement agencies in Mississippi called Galveston and said, and I don't know the exact words, but this is a loose summation. Hey, heads up, you got this auditor coming down there and he's going to cause some problems for you, kind of thing, is just brazen to me. It's
You know,
unbelievable.
it's completely unbelievable. And did I tell you about what happened right after that? And this is where pattern and practice comes into play. Is whenever I moved up to Utah, they had so I had done a First Amendment audit. I did what's called a silent audit outside of a bank in Utah, in Layton, Utah. And they had seen it and immediately sent an email out. He said, "My name is Hilton Sessoms, and I'm a captain with the Oxford, Mississippi Police Department and a graduate of the FBI National Academy. I'm reaching out regarding someone your department recently encountered. Matthew Oliver Reardon has my date of birth, is a former Oxford resident, a convicted felon, and a persistent issue for our department. It appears he has now moved to your city. We discovered a YouTube video in which he conducted a First Amendment audit at Zion's Bank in Layton. Given his history with us and in Texas, I wanted to share some background information. From our research, his current address is 1513 West, 1960 North, Layton, Utah." Okay, I had literally only been there for like a couple of days. I had just signed a lease with my landlord. I did not write that address down anywhere. I never turned it into any
It's
DMV,
wow.
nothing. Nobody had that address. Nobody. I didn't even know it myself. So from their research, 1,700 miles away, they obtained my address, and then it gets doxed out to 139 law enforcement officers. But when I filed the lawsuit on all that, I went and I served a sworn deposition on the FBI because I wanted to put criminal charges against him for unlawful surveillance, using those resources to run surveillance on me.
Right.
The FBI would not take the sworn declaration. They wouldn't. They said in order for an agent to speak to me, that I have to undergo a background check, and I declined it on Fourth Amendment grounds because I said a victim of a crime shouldn't be subject to further scrutinization. Well, I start reporting on that out in the parking lot, the visitor parking lot, and reading the sworn declaration, and they send two agents out and tell me that if I don't leave the visitor parking lot right now, that I'll be charged with trespassing. And like it, so through all of that, I come to the realization, wow. So Hilton Sessoms says that he's a graduate of the FBI National Academy, 1,700 miles away from their research. What kind of research? Okay, let's put two and two together. Chances are, since these people are not taking the sworn declaration, and since he's saying that he's from the FBI National Academy, I bet you it was a favor. The FBI basically ran that check for him, came up with my address um over in the Salt Lake City area. And so I honestly I've reserved my right to add in a Bivens claim on that, and
Oh,
to seek
interesting.
discovery on all that, because I believe 100% that the FBI was a part of, and it was several agents that that this has happened with. So they actually cam back me and film me with a cell phone. um so I actually did a FOIA request on that agent. I was able to capture a piece of his ID tag, and I FOIA'd the agent's the video from the cell phone, as well as any communication regarding that video or the guy that was out in the parking lot. And they won't even assign it a case number. Once again, it's a DOJ agency, and I guess they've been told to stonewall me. So,
Crazy.
um, yeah, I've basically had to learn to be a lone wolf out here. It's not the best of feelings, Courtney. To
Sure.
um
How big is your community, your auditor community?
Yeah, it's hard to say. There's so many people that want to basically do their own thing instead of. I believe we need to work together. We need to unite. We've got a common goal and purpose, but people just, they
What do
don't
you
want to
think?
unite the way that they need to.
Right. what do you think that is preventing, other than just ego, right? What do you think are the other barriers for not wanting to collaborate to become a stronger body, right? Instead of being an army of one, to be an army of 200.
I mean, I think that a lot of people, especially when their channel gets to a certain size, uh, they more or less feel like, well, I can just do this on my own. I can cover who I want to cover. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know that I've always been open to working with anybody. Um,
Right.
I, but there's a lot of people that, I've and the thing that bothers me, I guess, the most about everything is the fact that people don't look at all these crazy things that I've put on the website and on the YouTube channel and I've sent out to people and think, okay, well, ignoring this issue can make it happen to me. And that's
Right.
the thing. That's the dangerous precedent that's set with all of this is, you know, people don't realize they're looking and seeing what's happening to me and laughing, thinking it's funny. And what I mean, when it becomes an accepted practice, when it's overlooked, then it becomes an accepted practice and it's overlooked for anybody. What's to stop them from doing it to you next? I mean, and I'm a
Right.
Marine Corps veteran. I swore a lifelong oath to protect and defend the Constitution. They did it to me, so I mean, I guarantee you they'll do it to anybody. And it can't be even condoned once. I don't care how you feel about a person. You may hate that person, whatever, but to allow the government to laugh at the government doing, just literally violating that person's rights to the fullest is to invite that to happen to you.
Right. I would encourage you, and I don't know if if this comment will be part of the show. I recently saw an interview on the Jimmy Kimmel, well, it was a recording from the Jimmy Kimmel show. He had he wasn't hosting it that day. He had a guest host, and
Mhm.
he had Stacey Abrams on the stage. They did a talk with her. The talk is, I don't know, maybe about 5 minutes long, maybe a little longer, where she talks about the different phases and stages of moving from a democracy to a to um,
Tyranny or
so,
basically like a dictatorship,
from
right?
yeah, I was gonna say dictatorship. That was too firm. Autocracy, I think, is the term that she used.
Okay.
But the interview itself is unbelievable, and when she talks about the different stages, the transition, it's eerie. It's very, very eerie because there is a lot of there's a lot
Um,
of there are a lot of facts, right? You can actually tie, okay, this is stage one, X, and then you think about, okay, I mean, because we're all grown ups, we can formulate our own opinions. We don't need to be influenced by only one news outlet, right? But you just think about things and hopefully everybody tries to get their news from different outlets so that they can have more well-rounded opinions that are their own instead of being lemmings and sheep and just adopting somebody else's opinion. But when you just think about the different stages, and then she gives some examples, but you can obviously think of your own, that it's creepy. And then
it's
it's creepy and it pushes me to, there's a movie out there called not a movie, but a series called The Handmaid's Tale, and and it really is, the parallels in The Handmaid's Tale and the government that's established there. And I know it's fiction, right? But it's yeah, the alignments are really bad. But I would say more like an autocracy, crassy autocracy would be
yeah,
a better,
and we're headed.
and we're headed in that direction. But I highly encourage anybody just to go. It's out on YouTube. It's Stacey Abrams on the Jimmy Kimmel show. I think it just came out a couple of days ago. It's really, really good. And I mean, I know a lot of people are not a fan of Stacey Abrams, but I am. and I'm not embarrassed to say so.
You know, I want to definitely, you know, the biggest statement of all that I want to make right here, you know, in all of this. Well, there's been several, but right here, as far as this event in particular goes, the meat and potatoes is that the public deserves justice, the press deserves protection, and the law demands prosecution when citizens are assaulted by the very officials sworn to uphold their rights. And that
Yeah.
doesn't apply only to like an open assault like that, but I think it applies to civil rights violations as well, especially when, you know, they know that what they're
Right.
doing is wrong. Courtney, do you have anything?
No, I think we kind of covered it all today. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you on your channel.
And if anybody's in the Texas area, why don't you tell them how they can get in contact with you if they have any
Abs-
issues
Okay.
in your areas?
You bet. I am admitted to all 4 federal districts of Texas and the Fifth Circuit. I primarily practice civil rights litigation, more so excessive force type of litigation and some prisoners' rights. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Vincent Law PLLC, not Vincent Law Firm, Vincent Law PLLC. And my number is 713-223-9300.
Awesome, awesome. And the last thing I was gonna do right here as I was leaving the governor's mansion on Thursday, I went into thought about, you know, I had just pushed out this new music album called Bad Actors, which literally lays everything. I got to send you a copy of it. You'll love it, Courtney. There's no more of an epic way to out these people for doing what they've done. Osteen, you know, the officer that arrested me in Galveston, he's mentioned he's got about 5 songs dedicated to him on that album. I guarantee
Okay.
he'll think twice about that next time. But so I pulled it back, and I'm giving it out for free. So it's distributed for free. I wanted the truth to you know, go out, and a lot of people listen to music. So all these stories are told via music on a 15-song album called Bad Actors. I wrote every single song on there. I decided it was 14. I decided I was going to add a bonus track to it. I wrote this one. It's called Governor's Gone Too Far. Okay. And so I want to put this right here on the end. And I don't know if you've heard this or not yet, Courtney. If you haven't, check this out.
Okay.
Well, I roll up to Jackson outside the big house gates. Stars and stripes flying high, but ain't no pride in this state. Governor signed his name, ink lies upon a page. every line. Messing with freedom, trampling rights of mine. But I'm standing strong on the southern stars. Tell the world our governor's gone too far. So listen up, Reeves. Your days are drawing near. Liberty shouting loud. It's time you disappear.
So yeah, I decided I was going to add a bonus track in at the last second. So now there's 15 songs on it, and it's been submitted for distribution. So
Okay.
all right. Well,
Mhm.
hey Courtney, I appreciate you coming on. I wanted to have a expert in civil rights law come on that I could get your reaction and get the answers to some questions. So I know I definitely appreciate your time today.
I appreciate the opportunity, Matthew. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, take care of yourself, okay?
Yep. Yep. Take care. Stay dry.
You too.
Bye now.
All right. Bye bye.